I'm not sure when it happened, but I think that it has. I think I've lost track. I told you that I would. Nobody is capable of keeping up to date completely. I mean, if I was a news editor in a big media organisation, I probably would have put someone in charge of this and said, can you just keep a tally on every breach of the First Amendment undertaken by the president, undertaken by the new president? Can you keep a tally? And I'm making it specific to freedom of speech issues. But I have lost track. So I've got two articles in front of me. I've got a slightly weird memory in that it's very good at remembering some things and very bad at remembering other things. But I'm fairly confident that there will be stuff that I have missed. Quite a lot of stuff that I have either missed or forgotten that I did know but now couldn't drag to the surface of my mind. I mean, a couple of lines that should jump out at everybody. This is from Ramya Krishnan, who is of the Knight First Amendment Institute. It's a non-profit legal organisation at Columbia University, and a lawyer, a lead attorney on one of the cases fighting Trump's attempt to deport people who've committed no crimes. Ramya Krishnan compared the current scenario with the McCarthyite anti-communist witch hunts of the 1950s. This is the era probably best distilled down in Arthur Miller's play The Crucible, which is about the actual Salem witch hunts, but was very much a coded account of what it was like to be accused of communism in a context where it was impossible to deny it, and even knowing someone or spending time with someone. So, but this lawyer has said even then, even during the McCarthyite anti-communist witch hunts of the 1950s, you did not see the government rounding up students and faculty for engaging in political protest. I really think this is unprecedented. I don't know how aware of it you are. I don't know whether the crackdown on free speech in the United States, unprecedented though it is being reported as clearly and as concisely here as it could and should be. So expressing solidarity with Palestinians on an American campus is now grounds for arrest and possible deportation. It's a bit like when Suella Braverman lied through her teeth about everybody marching in solidarity with Palestinian civilians was somehow a supporter of Hamas and the terrorist atrocities that they have undertaken, most obviously on the October the 7th. It was a disgusting lie made by somebody who should obviously have known better, but doesn't and didn't. And yet it's become policy in the United States. Arrests, a string of arrests. You may have heard the name of Mahmoud Khalil, former student at Columbia, a permanent resident of the United States. The Secretary of State personally signed off on his arrest, allowing, under a really weird loophole that allows him to deport foreign nationals deemed to have potentially serious adverse foreign policy consequences for the United States, to which a cap-doffing forelock tugger responds by saying, well, he's obviously a wrong 'un, which is a position you can hold until somebody points out that he has previously worked for the UK government as a translator, such is the scale of his nefariousness that he was on the UK government payroll. So you might know his name. You probably don't know the name of Yoon Seo Chung, 21-year-old student at Columbia, a legal permanent resident. She attended a sit-in expressing solidarity with protesters who had been expelled. That's all. So she just attended a sit-in. She wasn't a leader of it. She was not a particularly serial participant. She never played an organising role or a leading role in any of the protests. The lawsuit fighting her arrest and deportation, I'll say that again, a 21-year-old student at Columbia, a legal permanent resident of the United States of America, facing arrest and deportation for sitting down in public at a protest against the expulsion of students who had been expelled for holding opinions. She was rather, says her lawsuit, one of a large group of college students raising, expressing and discussing shared concerns. Immigration agents tried to search her dormitory. They got help from federal prosecutors using a warrant that cited a criminal law against harbouring non-citizens. They haven't managed to find her yet. They haven't managed to detain her. And an actual judge has asked officials to halt efforts to do so. You probably know the story, if you don't remember the name, of Rumeysa Ozturk. Simon Marks told us about it last week. She's a 30-year-old doctoral student at Tufts. She was ambushed in the street outside her home by agents and put in a detention centre, accused of supporting Hamas, but with no evidence whatsoever cited. Her only known activism, according to her own friends and colleagues, was to co-author an op-ed in the school newspaper amplifying student demands that the university cuts ties with Israel. And you may not like the idea of a student newspaper calling for ties to be cut with Israel, which, of course, this morning stands accused of killing more aid workers. A little more on that story later. But that's all she's known to have done. She co-authored an op-ed in the school newspaper. I remember, I think it was the deputy editor or the American editor of The Spectator, came on Nick's show at the beginning of this saga and talked about how Donald Trump was going to be good for freedom of speech. And I mean, I'm busy in the mornings. I don't often catch what's happening on the radio while I'm preparing my own programme. But that one just jumped off and bit me right on the earlobe. I thought, are you mad, bad, or just dangerous? Donald Trump is going to be good for freedom of speech. Yeah. Arresting and deporting people for writing articles in a student newspaper. And there'll be other examples. There'll be examples that you have got and I have not. There'll be things that you can remember and I can't. And that's it. You're not allowed to protest in Donald Trump's America. Of course, in far-right and pro-Israel groups, there's one called Betar US, have been flagging individual student protesters, literally dobbing in people that they want to see punished and harmed, up to and including arrest and deportation, with no proof, remember, no evidence whatsoever that they're guilty of any of the things that they are accused of. That's your examples of what's going on in the world of students. Language and demonstrations as well. There's almost no one I don't want to deport, wrote Ann Coulter, one of the more conservative commentators in the United States. But unless they've committed a crime, isn't this a violation of the First Amendment? So even this person recognizes that if you are deporting people who haven't committed a crime, punishing in any way for opinions, expressed opinions, it's a violation of the First Amendment. And it is mad that what is going on, the absolute blatancy of these attacks on the most fundamental freedoms of speech. It's not just, of course, in the context of Gaza as well. No federal funding for diversity, equity and inclusion, which means that you won't get grants, you won't be allowed to operate if you do things like acknowledge the role that a black person played in the Second World War, or the role that a woman might have played in a moment of epic social change. The president of the American Association of University Professors has won an injunction against this ban after saying that the administration is pulling funding from projects that have prohibited words. Do you remember when all the anti-woke warriors were telling us that this stuff was going on and then they couldn't actually provide any examples? Particularly if you removed transgender issues from the conversational agenda, the idea that anyone was being cancelled or closed down or censored was almost impossible to establish. That they're words you can't say, I'm anti-woke, you should be able to say whatever you want, I believe in freedom of speech. Where have they all gone? Where have all these people gone? Prohibited words now in groups that seek federal funding, losing their grants if they use federal words. I beg your pardon, if they use prohibited words. You have the president of the American Association of University Professors saying nobody really wants Big Brother telling you what you can research. These are questions our country needs to know the answers to. For example, right? Differences in infant mortality in urban and rural areas. So you know in this country it has been proven statistically that black women in childbirth are more likely to suffer complications and even death than white women. Would you like to know why? I would. I've done phone-ins about it. If I was in receipt of funding from the current United States government, I would lose it for asking that question. Because it speaks to potential discrimination. It speaks to potential inequality, diversity, equity and inclusion. are now, in Donald Trump's America, bad things. He's got people in his administration who have said everything will go wrong if it's not being run by white men. They've said it out loud. But freedom of speech, yeah, he's good. He's going to be great. He's going to bring back freedom of speech. And there'll be stuff I haven't even touched upon. There'll be stuff I have completely... Oh, the Indian story. You see, you're doing it. I knew you would. Crowdfunding. I've forgotten the details. I posted it on my Blue Sky account, and I will refresh my memory shortly. But the message to Indian students that they should self-deport themselves. Are you familiar with that story? They should. All students in America from India, or many of them, have received invitations, if you like, to self-deport themselves. The White House is firing career prosecutors. A career federal prosecutor fired by the White House because he pursued a politically connected businessman and because he criticised Trump when he was running for Congress in 2020. Freedom of speech. He'll be good for freedom of speech. It's unprecedented for the White House to fire a career prosecutor, but they've already managed to do it twice. Reagan Fondren was the acting U.S. attorney for the Western District of Tennessee. Instead of just removing her from that role, which you could do and wouldn't be remarkable, they fired her from her career job. The list is almost endless. And yet they claim that they are upholding freedom of speech. Simon Marks talking to us last Friday about the student snatched from the streets outside her own home. I'll find the Indian story as well for you shortly. But it's happening now, and it is the polar opposite of freedom of speech. It is literally the persecution, the prosecution, the pursuit of people for holding and expressing opinions. Which makes the question I'm going to ask you now a bit weird, but it's an important one. I turn to the front page of the Daily Telegraph today and I read, and this isn't a criticism of the Daily Telegraph actually, although whether or not the further into the article you read you'll get any of the information that I've just shared with you, I don't currently know. But you remember when J.D. Vance, or Captain Eyeliner, made those ludicrous comments in Munich about people protesting unlawfully or even just gathering unlawfully outside abortion clinics being a graver threat to the West than Russia or China. I mean, an intervention of such incalculable madness that you almost lost the ability properly to analyse it. Well, the Telegraph reports today that the State Department, in whose gift American foreign policy lies, is worried about our freedom of speech. No free trade without free speech. So a country in which you can get locked up for writing an article for a student newspaper or attending a protest about other protests, just calling for freedom of expression, defending freedom of expression. And these messages, these orders are coming from the very top of the administration. That country thinks it can complain about curtailment, non-existent curtailment of our freedom of speech. Right. Thinking caps on. It's not immediately obvious to me why they're doing it. So some of it is going to be linked to potential social media legislation coming in on the horizon. Some of it is going to be recognising that they need unregulated social media in order to deposit their favoured political candidates into positions of power, as we saw most obviously in Romania. I'm slightly wary of the idea that there is cooperation and cohesion behind these events, but I'm increasingly drawn to the conclusion that there must be. But this simple question, why is a country that is routinely attacking freedom of speech simultaneously claiming that we've got a problem when we haven't? What is the plan behind it? To whom is it designed to appeal? How on earth does anybody end up more worried about the law being properly enacted in this country than they are about people being locked up for writing articles in a student newspaper? And I've even missed the bit, of course, about trying to completely rewire the Oval Office press conferences so that the only people present are sycophants and creeps. The proper journalists will be excluded from the room. They will not be allowed to ask questions. Within the year, Donald Trump's press conferences domestically will be confined to variations of the question, Mr. President, sir, on a scale of 1 to 10, how wonderful do you think you are? And I'm not even joking. To which he will respond by saying, that's a great question. I love that question. 11. That is what is happening. They're ripping out the heart of the fourth estate. The bits of it that haven't already been bought and carved up by Donald Trump, billionaire Donald Trump fans, are frightened. Lawyers are being sanctioned. Did you know that? Lawyers are being punished for representing people or prosecuting people that Trump likes. The legal system is under attack. The freedom of the press is under attack, and the freedom of speech of the citizenry is under attack. If you think it's not time to talk about fascism yet, I've got a bridge I'd like to sell you. But even I get a little bit daunted by the scale of these issues. Well, I don't say even I just mean it's my job. I don't mean I'm special in any way. So I need to focus on just one bit. And it is, although we'll continue to add to the list of things, I mean, Ben's absolutely right. Fascism 101, you accuse the enemy of the very crimes that you are committing. I mean, that's as old as fascism itself. You accuse the enemy of doing exactly the things that you are either doing yourself or that you're planning to do very soon. The whole anti-woke movement suddenly begins to make sense. It's built on a hill of beans. It's almost entirely spurious and invented and scaremongering. But when our lot start doing all the things that we've made up accusations of the other lot doing, it'll somehow be more normalised than it would be if we just turned up on day one and started locking up people for using certain words or for holding certain opinions or for writing certain articles. It's crazy, right? But this very specific bit of it is what I want your help with. So we will add to the list, I think, of examples of Trump trampling on free speech. So any that I've missed, you can remind me of 0345 606 0973 or text me on 84850. But why? Even the State Department, it's not just Captain Eyeliner getting uppity in Munich. This is now the State Department pretending that this country has a problem with free speech. The United Kingdom has a problem with free speech, even as their own president rides roughshod over theirs. Why are they doing that bit? Okay? Yeah, and as Paul points out, what's happened to all the people who were bleating about sovereignty not long ago? Hit the numbers now, you will get through. Why this bit? Why is the Trump administration chatting nonsense about free speech in this country while dismantling it in their own?